Hi everyone, welcome to Buckle Up Podcast. I'm Natalia Earle and I'm a certified business and life coach that loves talking to people. I'm fascinated by humans and how our brain works. What is it that makes a decision good or bad, and how does that decision ultimately shape our path and destiny? Everyone loves to talk about success, but what about the flip side? How about adversity? Failure is such a big and often necessary part of life, and it's simply unavoidable. So I invite you to join me on this inspiring, honest, unpolished interview show with breathtakingly real conversations that go deep on setbacks and hardships that are part of the puzzle that ultimately lead to growth, discovery of inner greatness, and what makes us resilient. Grab your helmet and buckle up, people. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But what a ride it will be. Today I sat down with Jenny Morrow. She's a Northern California native who moved to Miami, Florida after grad school. She spent 13 years working as an athletic trainer in various settings before transitioning to health and fitness coaching and personal training back in 2016. She now lives in Jacksonville, Florida with her husband Brett, daughter Sienna, and feisty pumpkin Hope. She has learned to navigate devastating loss in the wake of her son's death just hours after he was born in December of 2017, and now has a passion for helping you find strength for all seasons too. Well, hi, Jennifer.
Hi there.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Jenny Morrow. I am a Northern California native who moved to Miami after grad school. I met my husband there a few years after I had lived there. And we got married in 2013. In fact, we just celebrated our anniversary yesterday. So
congratulations.
6 years for us. And we moved up to Jacksonville, Florida about 3 years ago. And I work in health and fitness. I have a background in sports medicine. I was an athletic trainer for 13 years before I kind of went into more of a health and fitness space. So that's what I do for a living. We have a beautiful little girl who's about to be 6 months old. I have a very feisty Pomsky puppy, and we have one child up in heaven who actually just celebrated his third heavenly birthday. So that's kind of our quick story in a nutshell, but that's who I am.
Tell me Matthew's story a little bit.
So we got pregnant in April of 2017, and we're super excited. First pregnancy, we were excited to start our family. Everything was going great. We went in for our 12-week appointment, and you could kind of tell now thinking back, you could tell something was wrong, but it was my first experience. I didn't really know any different. But we found out at that appointment that he had multiple anomalies not compatible with life, is the technical medical term for it, and that we should prepare for a miscarriage or a stillbirth. So that was about 12 weeks into our pregnancy. I was faced with the awful decision that no mother should have to be faced with, which was abort or carry. And, in seeing this baby on the ultrasound screen, his heart was beating, and we didn't know it was a boy at the time. We chose not to find out the gender, so we actually didn't know we were having a boy until he was born. So obviously we chose to continue the pregnancy. I think when you're faced with a decision like that, you kind of have to do what rests well with you. And that was where I could find the most peace, was letting nature take its course, and fostering his life for as long as we had it. So he ended up being born about 6 weeks early. He was born at 34 and a half weeks, right after we moved to Jacksonville. And he was alive for 2 hours before he went to be with Jesus. And, we just got to love on him for the 2 hours. He made sure he met us. That's what I tell everybody. It was like, we didn't know if he'd be born alive. The odds were very against that. It was much more likely he would be stillborn. He wasn't interactive. We didn't have those moments of interaction with him other than physically being able to hold him, but we did get to spend 2 hours with him. And that was December 5th of 2017. So like I said, we just recently celebrated his third heavenly birthday. And it was a long, long grieving process, both throughout the pregnancy and then following the pregnancy, of just losing a child. That was a long, hard journey. And it's kind of the short version of his story. The details can get really lengthy, but that's him. And then we struggled to get pregnant for almost 3 years after that, until finally last fall we got pregnant with Sienna, and she joined us in June. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of Matthew's story.
Right. Oh my goodness. What an amazing story do you have. So how soon after did you decide to start trying for another baby?
So, what's funny about that question is I really thought, like, okay, we'll go through the pregnancy, we'll have the baby, I'll recover, we'll get pregnant right away again, because we got pregnant very easily the first time. I realized I was nowhere emotionally ready to be pregnant again for several months afterwards. I would say it was about 6 months after he was born that I started to really get to feeling like, okay, I'm ready to start this process again. We never went back on any kind of birth control or anything, so we weren't preventing. And it just didn't happen easily the second time. It didn't happen. And I don't know how much of that was just the emotions I was carrying. I don't know how much of it was like my body being like, nope, we're not ready to do this again yet. A combination of both. I'm older, all these different things. So we spent, several months just kind of, waiting for it to happen again. We did get pregnant in the fall of 2000. So it was at 18, and we miscarried right before Christmas that year. So there was a miscarriage in between Matthew and Sienna. And then again, we didn't go back on any kind of birth control, and it was just almost a whole other year of trying to get pregnant again. And I never wanted to be the girl who was trying to get pregnant, because most of the women I knew going through that were really stressed and really frustrated and kind of miserable. And, I found all of that to be true in my own journey. It's like I wanted it to happen naturally. It just wasn't. We ended up going to see a fertility doctor for it. But so I would say, in terms of when was I ready to, for me personally, it was about 6 months down the road, but it took us almost 3 full years, 2.5 years before we got our rainbow baby. And it was a long process. And that was almost more mentally exhausting than the pregnancy with Matthew and grieving afterwards. Cause it was like, gosh, we got pregnant super easily for a child who wasn't meant to live, yet we can't get pregnant again. Like, what is this world I'm living in?
Right.
So,
and it's just like seems so unfair, and there is so
yes.
much stress and so many emotions that go into it. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was really tough. I felt like we were going to go through all that with Matthew to then struggle to get pregnant, to miscarry, all that. I just felt cosmically unfair. And, because it was just like, gosh, why do we need more pain and more grief and things like that? But, and I think to a certain extent, you don't ever understand those details of your life. I know our daughter means the world to us. I wouldn't trade her for anything. But even the timing of her, like, so much time elapsed that it's not like, had we been pregnant, it would have affected her joining us. It's like we could have been pregnant almost 3 full times. So it was a long, hard road for sure. And not one I wish on anyone.
Yes, I can't even imagine what you must have gone through. And I know PTSD is a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How did that feel like or look like for you when you actually were pregnant with Sienna? And I remember reading your posts like every, a few months or so, and you would post this updates, how you felt every time you had a doctor's appointment. So walk us through those appointments a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, PTSD is a real thing. And, I think it's talked about a lot in terms of, the military, and that's, I think, where we're most aware of it, but it happens in any sort of trauma. And so going to each appointment was like really this like mental game of like getting there, seeing that everything was okay on the monitors, and feeling okay at the appointment. And then afterwards, you're like, oh gosh, now I have to make it till the next appointment. And just everyone was this like journey of, is it going to be okay today? And, you're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. And thankfully with Sienna, everything was fantastic up until the very end, where she ended up being really small. And we delivered early, about 3 weeks early because of that. But that was the only anomaly in her pregnancy. And she was totally fine. It was just like, she's safer out than in. So we're going to induce labor. But every single appointment was like, we checked all the boxes. And Brett, my husband and I would just look at each other like, oh, this is what a pregnancy is supposed to be like. This is what experience you're supposed to have. And it was just almost a shock every time that things were totally fine. And it's tough. You have all the fear. Almost every time you go to the bathroom, you're looking for spotting. I mean, it's just a crazy journey. So I really struggled to find excitement in the pregnancy. I mean, I loved her. I was excited to be her mom, but like people would ask if I was excited, and I was like, that's not the right term. Like, I'm anxious for her to be, I just want her here with us now.
Right.
Because going through it was just the waiting game of everything to be okay it was really hard.
I can't imagine. And you're just like, I just want this process to be over.
Yes. I was like,
Probably.
could you put me in a coma until we deliver and then like wake me up,
Oh my goodness.
I so didn't want to have to do every day. But we made it. We made it
Yes.
to the other side.
So tell me about the happy moment when she arrived in the hospital and she's in your hands. What did that feel like?
Oh, it was so amazing. So yeah, we did induce, and labor was good. It was labor, but it was good.
Did you have her naturally again?
I didn't. And with the induction, I kind of tried, and when they're pumping in all these medicines to get your body, I was just like, I don't know how long this is going to take. It's starting to get heavy. And so I opted for an epidural with her. My body wasn't really relaxing into the labor process with her. It was kind of like stalled. And they were just like, we really think an epidural will help you with the labor progression. And it did. It was like, as soon as I took that, I was able to rest. My body did all the things it was supposed to. And within like 4 hours of having that, she was here. So, not a natural labor with her, vaginal, but not natural.
Right. Right.
And I remember, you're pushing and everything, your eyes are closed, and the doctor's like, look down. I'm like, oh my God, she's here. And they put her on, you wait to hear her cry, of course. And they put her on me, and it was just like, oh my gosh, here she is, and it's just sort of this flood of relief of like, okay, I can breathe. She's in my arms. She's alive. Like, I think I felt like I could breathe for the first time in not 9 months, really maybe 3 years from like when everything happened. But it was a really precious moment, and I just like, I haven't wanted to leave her like ever since. I'm like, I want her with me all the time.
She's so beautiful.
Oh my gosh, she's like such a little ray of sunshine. We just love her. She's such a good baby.
So tell me a little bit about your husband. Like, how, did he deal with everything, and what did that look like for your relationship, for your marriage?
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have good days, bad days? Did you, were you able to talk to each other and share the emotions?
Yeah. So he is a really strong and steady guy. And in a lot of ways, he handled it like a classic dude, and I handled it like a classic female. And I would say we didn't really have conflict in handling it, except for during the miscarriage, where like I couldn't tell how I mean, I knew he was upset about it, but for me, sometimes it would feel like he could get more emotional about the outcome of a football game. And he wasn't showing the emotions that I quote unquote needed for what we were going through. And we kind of had it out about that once. And he's like, just because I don't express it in the same way doesn't mean I'm not handling it. Doesn't mean I'm not feeling it. So we had kind of that one time where tensions got a little high. But for the most part, he's been there, he's been steady, he's kind of let me feel the emotions, and he took more of the supportive role. And then he would share things from time to time. He wasn't overly vocal about it, like most guys probably wouldn't be, I
Right.
would think. So it didn't, we didn't get to a point where our marriage was on the rocks because of it or anything. If anything, it forced us to go through something really hard together. Not perfectly. I don't ever want to,
Right.
we did not do it perfectly, but we did do it together, which I think is an important thing. I can't imagine doing it with anybody else.
Did you find that grief for you had different stages? Were you going through different emotions?
Yeah, so we actually talk about this a lot in our loss group. You expect, when you go through something hard, you sort of expect you're going to go through all the phases of grief. Like, okay, check. Now I'm here, what, anger, sadness, acceptance, all of those things. And I just found that it's not this linear thing. It's a very roller coaster of, you're going to be in this phase, but then you might bounce back to the first phase, or you might jump forward a little bit and be okay for a little while, and something that might set you back. And it's just not this straight line of, okay, I'm no longer grieving. It's a very fluid and roller coaster process. I find the emotion I return to most often is anger. I think that's the easiest thing to feel in a lot of ways. It's easier to be angry than sad. And that even now, even 3 years later, and with Sienna with us, like, that's the thing that comes most easily for me. So it's definitely not this, I'm just going to go through everything and things will be fine. It's just, you find yourself feeling one way and another way, and it's all over the place for a long time. So very, very turbulent, I guess.
Yes, and it also depends on the time of the year, like birthdays, holidays, everything triggers this emotion.
Right.
And it all comes back out again, like you feel like, oh, I have it handled. And then boom, like you wake up and there is a date, some sort of.
Yeah. And I would find, to your point about that, like, I would find that there'd be days I just felt off, and I'd be like, what's the matter with me today? And then I would look at the calendar and be like, oh, this was, I mean, his birthday is obviously very prominent, but maybe like it was the day I found out I was pregnant, or it was his due date, or something like that. It would be like, there'd be some correlation of that time of the month, the specific calendar day, and I was feeling it but didn't realize it until I saw the date, and I was like, oh, and I could put those two things together. So it's interesting the way our mind remembers things, and we're not really cognizant or paying attention to it until we're like, why am I just off today? Why is it a wrong side of the bed kind of day? And then you're like, oh, okay.
Right. Throughout this journey, was there a time where you were mad at God?
Absolutely. There was a time, there's still times where I'm like, God, I don't get you. And I think that's okay. I always say that he created me and he knew exactly how I was going to feel every step along the way. So there's peace in that for me, just being able to be authentic with how I'm feeling. I was very angry. I was very like, God, I tried to do everything the right way, like try to do all the things the way you'd want me to do them. And yet this is what you give us.